that music was brought to you and played by Steve Miller, my brother-in-law, and produced by Lainey Miller, my niece.
Welcome to another episode of the Outside Insides podcast, where we engage with individuals who are making a difference. I'm your host, Chris Burkhard, and today I'm thrilled to have really good friends and hiking buddies on the show. We call ourselves the Misfits. We've been hiking for a lot of years together. We've got t-shirts, we've got some goofy bylaws, and we all have roles that we play just like any team. We're five Misfits: Mark Muneman, Jack Nystrom, Chris Whitfield, Ray Knabb, and myself, Chris Burkhard. Welcome, boys. I feel like we've been rehearsing for this show for decades, and we certainly have spent a lot of time waxing philosophical on the trail. Thanks for being a part of Outside Insights, guys.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Got it. That's fun. And they're not normally this quiet, and they're not going to be this quiet for long, I guarantee that. So, but before we get into introductions and some questions, I wanted to share kind of why I wanted to do the show with you guys. I mean, the first thing is I often write about our escapades. And, you know, I don't know about you, I learn a lot of lessons, physical lessons, mental lessons. We're not getting any younger. We're always trying to figure stuff out. So a subscriber actually suggested it would be cool to hear our stories from the group. I actually have a subscriber, at least one, right? At least one that wants to know what we're doing. And I've been focused a lot this year on self-care, on getting healthy. And I began to realize how the Misfits checks a lot of the boxes on how to be happy in life. And I don't know if you guys will agree, but we could talk about it. They always say in all those articles you need to have a hobby. Well, certainly backpacking is a hobby. We spend a lot of time trip planning, discussing gear, maybe drinking beer, going to dinner. And it's also important for guys to have friends. I don't know a lot of 50, 60, 70-year-olds that hang around and act like 12-year-olds like we do. So it's got to be good for us. It's also great to be outside. There's, everything talks about go and take your shoes and socks off and stand in the grass and get outside. We spend too much time indoors. So I don't know about you, but it's great for energy. It's great to de-stress. And then we get exercise, right? For me, that's a big deal. It checks all the boxes. So in the spirit of things, this is a great thing to be talking about because all my listeners are trying to have the life they want. And man, they all want stuff that they love. And I love this stuff and you guys too. But I figured we'd start with, a simple question. What's your trail name? What role do you play in the group? And maybe a little bit about yourself. I'm sure we got some thoughts on simple bios. Mr. Muneman, you want to get us started?
Oh, sure, absolutely. My trail name is Bloodhound. For some reason, I always seem to find my way. No matter how much you guys try to ditch me, I always find my way back. But that's
Unless
okay.
You're walking with me, and then I distract you. I know.
That is a true statement. Personally, I am a CPA by my work. I'm also a husband, father, and now a grandfather. I've had a desk job my whole life. And later in life, I just had the need to get out and do something different. And not to get too far ahead, but a conversation with Chris led to where we are today. But I just enjoy getting out with the guys. And like Chris just said, I love being outdoors. I find it very energizing, and it gives me the right balance that I've been looking for a long time. So that's some about me.
That's world class, Mark. Whitty, you want to go next? Chris Whitfield?
All right. Well, you just gave my trail name as Whitty, but
and your response is classic Whitty. So go ahead.
Thanks for that, Chris. But initially, I was given the name Sparky, and that's because on our trips before I started coming, you guys didn't light fires, and you guys retired to your tents, and I came along and I started lighting fires. And ever since then, it's become a staple of our trips. I'm also an avid outdoorsman and a gearhead is what I would label myself. And I don't mean gearhead in the aspect of cars. I like buying gear for the trips. I have a new piece of gear probably on every trip that we go on. As far as, my role in the group is, I've said this about myself many times that I tend to overthink things. And I like the planning aspect of the trips. I like to assist others in planning the trips. And that's pretty much me.
So the over planning thing, we even got him a T-shirt that signified that he might over plan. So there might be something to that.
I didn't wear that T-shirt. I almost did.
But you're wearing a really good T-shirt today. Is that Brad Pitt on your shirt, or is that some other actor? Yeah, we'll leave that one alone. Jack Nystrom, come on down.
Okay. I'm Jack. My trail name is Whiskey Jack. And I got it because initially I would bring a little shot of whiskey, or maybe two, to drink after dinner. Easy to carry that alcohol with us. And sure enough, everybody else started bringing whiskey too. So I'm really not the only one drinking whiskey now, but initially I was Whiskey Jack.
Hey, Jack, Drambuie Jack just doesn't roll off the tongue, does it?
That is true. I actually enjoy Drambuie more than whiskey, but you're right, it doesn't roll off the tongue. So I am a retired chemist, a process chemist, or a guy who worked in production plants. And I also enjoy the outdoors. My biggest hobby is cycling. I'm a very avid road cyclist, but I also enjoy skiing and sailing, and I enjoy gardening. So I'm probably behind the group a lot of times on the trail because I'm taking pictures of plants. I'm doing a little more observation. I'm just out to see everything I can when we go on a trip. And for that reason, I think I enjoy the spring trips more than the fall because there's more growing in the woods when we go on the spring trips.
Jack, in the beginning, I used to just want to walk and walk fast, but I've learned to appreciate to see what you see. So we all learn from each other.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I'm probably the one who goes to bed the latest or goes in the tent the latest and gets up the latest. I really enjoy sitting around a campfire if we can make a campfire and just hanging out and talking with whoever's still up. By nature, I'm a night person. So I pay the price in the morning when everybody else is going, hey, Jack, come on, let's go. We're ready to leave.
I think we pay
It's not
the
that
price.
bad, though. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, I think it's a mutual benefit there, Jack. Jack is also the one most likely to be catching up on his movies from 1991, maybe 1992, but he certainly entertains us. And our junior member of the Misfits, Ray Knabb.
Hello. Thanks for having me, Chris. So as Chris mentioned, I came along a little bit later in I guess 17, I think it was my first trip. But I developed the trail name of Steel recently, and I think I guess I rely on other people to name me that. But the explanation they gave me is they think I'm a man of steel. I don't know, maybe because I'm aggressive with how I break logs and things to prepare for fire. But I have always been very outdoorsy, and growing up as a kid, spent a lot of my time in the woods, in creeks, and catching frogs and snakes, and so it's kind of under my fingernails as I grew up, so it kind of fed into finding this group, or this group finding me, and after a couple attempts of Chris asking me, please join us, and you'll see why, I did, and I see why. We the first trip we were in I believe the Smokies, and for 5 days.
Yes,
threw me right into the fire, and it was great. I loved it. But I think one of my roles around the campfire is to keep the fire lit. I I I tend to use some of my learning tactics from sports days to motivate. So a lot of times I'll be in the back trying to bring someone along.
You can say my name. It's fine.
I haven't yet put your arm over my shoulder, but yeah. The things that kind of motivate me are the athletic aspect, the being able to dig deep at times when you think that it's a little too much. I thrive on those kind of feelings. But
And
yeah,
honestly, dude, that's been a great addition. We need all kinds, and we have all kinds of skills and attitudes and, different approaches represented. So I have two trail names. One is Chinkajgook, Last of the Mohicans. So many eons ago, I walked out in front on this group. That was a long time ago. Boy, man, how about that? Somewhere along the lines, we were on the long trail in Vermont. And if you've ever camped or backpacked, you come across these, some nice shelters, some not so nice shelters. This happened to be a beautiful 3-sided shelter that probably slept 12, had bunk beds, had an upper deck. But you end up camping with people that you don't know. Maybe they got in late. And somebody at breakfast said, which one of you sleeps and snores like Darth Vader? And at the time, that was me. And Darth Vader was, as one of the trail names that kind of comes and goes and sticks, although I don't snore anymore. So maybe I'll get a new one, right? We've been hiking long enough to do it. If you can't tell from this podcast, this is probably my role: court jester, comic relief, smart aleck comment, a quip, sports statistics. I'm pretty good at remembering batting averages of Mike Schmidt from 1987 and shit like that. And, I'm most likely to go to bed early. I'm most likely not to cook my food before I eat it, and a whole host of other things like that. But I'm sure that spurred up comments. Go ahead.
Well,
So when did you stop snoring?
Yeah.
There you go. In my own mind.
I must have missed
that
that one.
I have for
not-
the last few weeks.
We've been on for 13 minutes. I have not snored once.
There you go.
Muneman, you're up.
No, well, one of your questions was, how did we form the group initially? And if I could just give some history, if you'd like,
Yes.
on how that all started. It goes back to Marie and I were hiking in Shenandoah way back, and I got the bug up my butt that I wanted to hike the Appalachian Trail. So like most people who do that, the first thing you're supposed to do is go out and buy the Bill Bryson book of A Walk in the Woods to have a good laugh, which I did. But then several weeks later, Chris and I were at our Rotary Luncheon, our weekly Rotary Luncheon,
Yep.
and the topic came up about hiking. And Chris shared with me that he had done a ton of it as a kid.
Yep.
And as a young man, and I had done none of it. And I was 47 at that time. And
What year was that? Was that 07?
2007.
Okay.
Yeah. And so that led up to our first hike back at Shenandoah as it went. In April 2007 was our first hike. And that was my first experience in backpacking was that time. But I also want to share that my role with the group is one of whatever anybody needs as a resource, but I'm also the official scribe of our history. So for every trip that we take now, I request that we have some notes, and the more details, the better, because you do forget. When you're in the woods, everything kind of looks the same. But the stories are getting better and better. But here's what I wrote on our first trip. It's just a few sentences. We started at Skyland and headed to Big Meadow for our first night camping. Shared a 2-man tent with Chris snoring like a bear with a cold. Mark swears to purchase his own tent no matter the cost. So,
And actually, he's bought one every year for 15 years.
That's
Prove his point.
That's right. So that was my first hiking experience, and that's how we got started. That fall, Jack is a neighbor of mine up the block, and we invited him for our second trip to, I think it was Dolly Sods.
Dolly Sods.
And over some beers and whatnot, we came up with the name, the Misfit Hikers, and that's how everything stuck since then. Chris Whitfield joined us in 2012.
All right.
And then Ray joined us in 2017. So this is our little group, and it's been wonderful.
How many hikes? Any idea? You might have had
I know exactly how many hikes. 33, what I call the official long hikes of, 2.5 or long weekends and or anything beyond that. We do have a bunch of other one-nighters that I don't count, but we've had 33 hikes. We've covered 926 miles for an average of 28 miles per hike, which is pretty good for roughly 2.5 days is what our typical hike is. I
complained for 900 of the 928 miles.
Duly noted.
Duly noted.
So that's our brief history lesson right there.
Do you think the Misfits, there's a famous Misfit group of Yvon Chouinard, the founder of North Face, the founder of Royal Robbins. Did we find the name before we knew that, or was that our inspiration? Does anybody know that answer?
Say that again.
I don't know.
So,
sure.
Yvon Chouinard of Patagonia and his buddies called themselves the Misfits in the 50s and 60s when they climbed. And I wasn't sure if that was our motivation or if it was just weird coincidence.
I think it's a weird coincidence.
Yeah, weird.
Because I didn't know that story you just said about Chouinard.
How about
I never heard that.
Yeah, one of his books is Let Your People Surf, and he talks about it. It's a great book. And that just proves it. That I can see your faces in reaction that I assume one of us knew that.
Nope.
I thought you guys got the name from the Rudolph movie, The Land of Misfit Toys.
Misfit Toys.
The Land of Misfit Wilderness Areas. Yeah, I'm familiar with that one. That's our own version of that. So, I don't know, guys. Feel free to jump in if you have something to share. But
I have to say,
go ahead.
Dolly Sods was baptism by fire for me. I borrowed a neighbor's tent, which was like 18 inches high. It was, I could not even sit up in the thing. I had an old sleeping bag, which was probably rated at about 50 degrees. And it was probably the coldest night I've ever camped out. What was it? Like 10 degrees the first night we camped out in the parking lot.
Yes, very cold.
And I put every stitch of clothing on just to stay warm. And I was like, I don't know if I'm going to enjoy this. But
my guess is that sleeping bag might have weighed 8 pounds.
Yeah, no, only 7 pounds.
Only 7 pounds, but
yeah, it was an old fiberfill. Yeah.
A gearhead Whitfield. What's a sleeping bag weight today versus 7 pounds?
The 20 degree that I use is a quilt that weighs 22.8 ounces or something like that.
Yeah.
So that's what, a pound,
2 pounds,
4 ounces, pound and a half, less than a pound and a half.
I'd love to hear you guys' perspective on just kind of how the sport has changed in the 15 to 20 years that we've been doing it, in particular gear. Who wants to rip on that?
I think the gear master should. Witty.
Certainly water filters and stoves have come a long way.
Yeah, that's
you're absolutely right. The stove that we used on the first trip was gasoline. It was a one-piece, one-burner stove and a tank. It was a Coleman. I think it was the best in breed, and I think it did weigh 5 pounds or 4.5 pounds, with fuel in it. So it's come a long way. But Chris, I'm treading into your territory, and I'm going to be corrected soon. So take over.
No, I think a lot of the gear has changed because people, a lot of gear is made by large manufacturers, and large manufacturers, they're in the big outlet stores. You go to REI, they outfit you with whatever they believe or whatever has the best reviews, and they're not really so concerned about weight. And I think that everybody that starts in backpacking ends up at REI or some other type of large store, and they buy what someone who doesn't do a lot of backpacking tells them to buy, and you end up repurchasing it. And I think that the gear is going more towards garage. I refer to like garage grown gear or other places where it's small boutique manufacturers that do this. They basically found a way to make a living doing what they love. So the gear's gone from aluminum to titanium. You've gone from regular backpacks to quilts. Tents have gotten much, much lighter to where they're incorporating your walking sticks instead of having tent poles. So a lot of changes are happening with gear that are driven by carrying weight and, heading towards that minimalist mentality.
I think that's always an interesting balance, Chris, because I think what would you guys say our packs, where did we start? Mark and Jack, Chris, where were we in the early days? What was our pack weights? We probably didn't even weigh them, but if you had to guess, what do you think they were?
Low
50
30 pounds. Nah, that wasn't that much, but I would say definitely 35-pound range.
Okay.
35 to 40, maybe 40 at the very start.
I know my first trip, I was over 40. I had to be, because I had change of clothes. I had all kinds of stuff that I didn't need. So I know
it's part of your initiation too.
Yeah.
What's that?
You never did find the rocks that we put in the bottom of your bag.
He did find them.
I found them when we got home.
Yeah. Well, we did sign them for you. We painted little smiley faces on them and stuff, so we thought you would appreciate that. So I had a big old massive expedition pack, so I'm sure mine was over 40. But Chris, in what you're saying, every piece of gear has been improved or had a reduction in weight, or it's been multi-purposed, right, where you do 2 or 3 things with it. What are our packs weighing today? And, where do you guys, before they always talk, I think it's before you put food in, but what's your kit weigh, I think that's right?
My base weight is probably in the 15-pound range, but that's just the tent, the sleeping bag, the backpack, and your basic gear. And then somewhere in the 26 to 30 pound, I think if you were going out for a week, you're probably going to be closer to 35 with food.
Right.
But that's a week's worth of food. So somewhere hovering around.
I come in at 28 pounds lately.
Yeah. Even as the biggest guy, I'm in the 33 to 38 pound range with food and water. So,
But you always carry a refrigerator section, which is really, kind of heavy.
That's good resale in the wilderness, though. At times it comes in handy. It's trade for other things. Is this a hobby for us? A friend group, an exercise club, all the above? What do you think?
Hey, before we go into that, Chris, let me add something in the gear department. The latest purchase I made is probably, I think, part of this we're asking what piece of gear do we like the most, or
yes,
we're both glad that we have. I bought a chair that weighs a pound, and I was able to do that because everything else is so light. So I thought, hey, why not? And what a difference that's made in my hiking life. When you get back, when you get into camp after a 13-miler, rocks and lots of incline, decline, it feels so good to let your back release. And you can't do that sitting on a log.
Yeah.
Or
against the tree.
And it's the last 2 hikes, I found it very valuable.
Did everybody end up with a chair? Because there was a certain amount of chair envy. I think I'm pretty sure Mudderman got the first one, and every time he got up, we stole his chair.
Yes, this is true.
This is true. Even I bought a big boy, fat boy chair to be able to use. And, I think, thank you, Ray, because that kind of brings me back to where I thought I wanted to go. And it's, in the beginning, we brought everything. And then we went really minimalist. And now I hear us kind of talk, well, there's certain things I want to bring. Like, there's like a balance between, I want a chair, or, I'm going to bring something that is important to me and my kit. Have you guys gone through that same evolution? Because I certainly find myself there. Jack, if you recall, the first time you backpacked with me, I didn't even bring a tent.
Right.
When I was young, I thought just wrapping myself in what's called a bivvy was the coolest thing ever. And it is until it's 10 degrees or you wake up covered in daddy long legs, and then it's not so fun, But
so that was an interesting night, though, because that was also the night it was pitch black. It was very, very cold. And that's the night that the coyotes came into our campsite.
Oh, my gosh, I forgot.
Yeah. And you were just like a taco waiting to be eaten on the ground.
They were either mating or fighting right between us.
Yes, they were. They were right in camp. And that was a little terrifying for a few moments. But, that's when that minimalist just doesn't sound good to me.
Yeah, because those nylon walls really keep coyote out, But it's an impression. Other thoughts on the topic on this? Kind of.
No, I think you're right in what you just said. In that, the pendulum is swinging back a little bit to creature comforts that we really do like, and as Ray said, they really do serve a purpose. I agree 100%. There's nothing like giving your back a break. From walking all day with 30 pounds or so on your back. And your choices when you get to camp are, I lay down in my tent or I sit on a log. And the camp chair is just a nice go-between those two. So I agree.
I do think people retire for not just because they want to close their eyes, they want to rest their bones.
Yes.
So we end up getting in those tents a little early at times. I think I extended my campfire existence a little longer by having a chair.
Yeah,
and more whiskey.
I think, Ray, you're right. The chair means you don't have to lay down, and
That's right.
You take a load off. Let's talk a little bit about our trips. Do you have a favorite moment, favorite place we've been? Details that you remember?
Hey, Chris, when I thought about this question, a couple things came to mind. Every trip I've been on, there was some parts of it that I loved and some parts of it that I didn't like so much. So I could take parts of one trip and put it with another part of another trip and have the most fantastic trip ever. But I don't think any of them were just that solid, perfect trip. You have the night before you go out into the woods that we're doing some great things. We have, we're excited. We spend time catching up because we don't see each other very often other than these trips. And then you head out into the woods, and the first day it's, this is the greatest thing ever. Fresh air, rocks, plants, trees. And then you camp that first night. The excitement's so high those first days. And then
I can't wait to tell you guys the same jokes that I told you in the spring and the fall. I can't wait.
We can't wait to hear them.
Jack, I think you like the dinner the night before more than the hiking. Is that true?
No, that's not true.
Oh, all right.
Did I say that?
You might have wrote it. I don't know. Or maybe I made it up. But go ahead, Ray. I'm going to talk over you. Just jump in.
Oh, that's I think everybody would agree that, those little, you chop it up in pieces and there's some really great things. And then there's some days that not so much when, it's a downpour and your gear's leaking and your feet are wet and you're slipping on rocks. I don't think anybody loves that.
So, backpacking itself is, but backpacking is like a wonderful slow burn, right? Like the pack it starts off okay in the morning, and by 4 o'clock, it feels like you're carrying a tractor trailer on your back, right? Or the hill that you start off in the morning that, wow, you guys scamper up it as I cuss at you at the base, but I eventually make it up. You feel pretty good, and then after a while, it just gets heavier and harder and all those things. But I love that it's a slow burn that I could still do. We couldn't go play pickup football. I would pull a hamstring again. One of us plays baseball. That's a different podcast. But, we're not doing the fast twitch stuff. This is something that we can all do. And I love that athletic part of it. And you're right, Ray. But I'm a little surprised at you because you're the one with steel in your nickname, and you never look like it's hard, ever. You never look like it's hard. I look like it's hard to put my shoes on. It's just you got it really down, and I think that's a good thing about having you around, and you make up for all that. But I actually like the adversity, and I like the shit that goes wrong. And I like when we're freezing.
I was getting ready to say the same thing. I like it too. I don't like waking up and putting damp clothes on in the morning, and you're trying to eat, and it's just uncomfortable. But then when you're walking in the rain the next day, the rest of the day, it's almost like, can I make it through this? Can I get to the end? And how hard is it going to be? I can do this, and you kind of feed off of that.
Yeah, I find that just having the backpack on your back and everything in it, and if you need something and you don't have it in your backpack, it's too bad. I find that very cleansing, if that's a word for it, because it's minimal. If you don't have it with you, you don't have it at all. And given that we have everything at our fingertips in our lives, especially electronically, I think it's just so nice to just disconnect from all of that and just get out into the woods. That's what I love about it the most. And as I go, what you're saying, Chris, I agree. Gives you a chance to just worry about one thing, putting one foot in front of the other, and you get into kind of almost like a moving meditation almost.
That's exactly right.
Your mind just frees your mind to wander, and you can think about something or nothing or whatever, but you just got to keep moving forward. And I really enjoy that out of the whole thing.
I think it's one of the rare times when I'm not thinking about something. I'm thinking about the pain in my foot, or I'm thinking about the walk, but I'm not focused on work, or I'm not focused on a problem or an issue in my life. You're right. It's like meditation or sleeping, and that is a great benefit. Who else has more to share on this?
Before the trip, we go through all this work to list everything we need, make sure we got it all, pack the pack as light as possible. And then that's, it gets your mind going, and that's a good thing. It forces you to concentrate. And then you get in the car, and as soon as you get in the car, like Mark was saying, the journey has started. You got what you got, and then you don't worry about it. And your mind is just, you can forget all the other stuff, and the fun really starts.
And I like all the roles we play once we get in the car. Me, Chris, go ahead.
No, you were saying about best. Are we on a question of best moments, or you're looking for best moments? What are we looking for here?
Go ahead.
I actually had my best moment, and I know you had a similar moment on the John Muir Trail as I had, and we were coming out on the last day. And
hey, Chris, tell everybody where John Muir Trail is and a little bit, just so people get a sense of it.
John Muir Trail is basically in California. Does it go into Nevada at all at the parts that we were on into the Indio?
I don't think so.
Maybe not where we were. National Forest may go that far.
Jack, do you have the details on that?
I believe the John Muir Trail is a 200-mile section of the Pacific Crest Trail.
Awesome.
And we hiked a subsection about, I think, 40 miles of the John Muir Trail.
Yeah, and I know we went
Plus the
through
in and out.
we went through 3 different park sections, or like the Inyo Canyon, Kings Canyon, and somewhere else. So, and I don't know if those traverse outside of California. But at any
Well, I
rate,
know we were pretty close to Yosemite right there, right?
correct. And I had the moment similar to what you had. I think you had it with your son Josh. Was on the trail, sitting around the lake that night. But when we were walking out, I look back at this and I almost tear up every time I think about it. And we came over we were coming out of camp, going up the last mountain. As we got to the top of the last summit to go down and back to our cars, the sun was coming up. There was a lake. There was another mountain lake, glacial lake off in the distance. And it just hit me. And that's probably the one moment ever hiking that I lean on the most.
I think sometimes you can get there in a day, but there is something to the longer trips in how
I was cleansed. It felt I guess that's the way I could describe it.
I think that's an excellent one. Anybody else have a favorite trip moment?
Yeah, one of my favorite trips, because I, as you know, I didn't make the John Muir trip, but I like the White Mountains in New Hampshire. I think, Jack, you had planned that one.
Kings Canyon.
That's right. And that was a what they call a hut-to-hut hike, which is something a little different, but it's nice to not have to set up a tent at the end of the day and break it down in the morning, and also have food as well. But that was just some spectacular views, and I really just enjoyed that whole trip in New Hampshire.
And I think we had a Thanksgiving dinner cooked by volunteers the last night.
Right. The last night. We ate like kings. We really did.
Even though it was in September, right?
And
Yes.
contrary to what everybody thinks, a thru hiker does not smell when they're sleeping next to you. Maybe that's not true.
Maybe that's not true.
Maybe that's not true at all. They don't think they smell, but
Yeah.
that's for sure.
It's because everybody smells.
Yeah, that's true. So, anybody else with favorite, kind of favorite spots or anything like that? I'd be curious. Is it the planning for you guys? Is it the discussions we have? Is it the hiking? Is it all of it? What works for you?
Well, that'll bring me into one of my favorite hikes, and all the things that surrounded it. We had to train extensively for Rainier. We kind of train for every hike. I do personally, but Rainier was a different level, a different gear set. We had to kind of go by recommendations.
It was so fun buying all that shit.
Yeah, buying the things and hiking the Reservoir Hill in Newark, and just making sure our bodies were right. The hike was phenomenal. It wasn't as it was the kind of pain that I like. It was something we had to just dig through. So it wasn't enjoyable, like to see different things all the time, but at the end it was nice. You had some really intense training. I like that. And then after the trip, we stayed out in the Pacific Northwest and enjoyed that area for a week following.
Fantastic.
Our couple wives met us out there, and we were able to take advantage of the trip.
We each don't have a couple of wives. Our separate wives joined us, just to be clear. Our Utah contingent will be disappointed, but hey, we'll see what happens.
Right.
So Rainier, trying to get to 14,000 and some change. You started 4,000 and some change. You immediately hit snow. You get to a glacier. And we got to how far, guys? Was it 11.5?
Yeah.
11.5.
Yeah.
Disappointment cleat.
Who wants to tell that story?
So we got up
Witty.
to Camp Muir the first night. 10,000 feet. Got up the next morning, went through all the training that we had to do using the ice axes and the ropes. Headed up in the afternoon and got to 11.5 and set up. Well, the tents were all set up for us, but got set up for camp. Learned how you deal with an environment that's just all snow, because that's what it was. And then they told us they'd wake us up at midnight and we'd head up to the peak. But when we got up at midnight, was it sleet? Was it wind? Was it fog? Which
Yes.
one of those was it?
Yes,
They-
yes.
Yes, and yes, and yes.
It's all
they
of the
decided
above.
It was too much.
Blizzard
Yeah.
conditions.
Wind.
Yeah.
And that was frustrating. You spend 9 months, good bit of money, you train. But in the end, I always wanted to mountaineer, and you guys kind of made that happen for me. So I really appreciate it. And hopefully it was a good slice of life. Different than some of our other trips, but neat to do some mountaineering and to try all that and learn all that. And we'll probably post a picture of us from that as one of the couple that we'll put up.
A few years back, I started Outside Insights really as a platform to do good. The pandemic was raging. It was a time of confusion, angst, and it kind of triggered some creativity where, for me, I was constantly spending time with either entrepreneurial business clients or the workforce. And there were problems with people not necessarily being where they want to be in life. So the irony is Outside Insights and my book Opposite the Crowd, which I co-authored with my dad, Alan Burkhard, were kind of born together, as Alan was some of those early guests. And those guest shows turned into chapters of our book. It was an audiobook first. It can be found anywhere you listen to audiobooks or listen to podcasts. It's out in both. But I did want to share for those of you that are interested in reading our story. And there really is some great stuff about helping you have the life you want, helping you work on leadership or master change. There's some great stuff in there. And that book is now available. It's available in a hardback from Amazon, and the Kindle as well as Audible versions are up. And I ask that you just, you're on Amazon anyway, ordering stuff for the house. Check out Opposite the Crowd and let me know what you think. Thank you.
So moving on, how have things changed for us? The themes of kind of how things have changed since we started for the Misfits.
I would say efficiency. We make the most of each trip, and we do it with a lot less effort than we had to. The planning just kind of flows. We usually get together for a dinner beforehand, and that's really a lot of fun. But we don't spend as much time talking about the trip at that dinner.
You're right. I think, I don't know about you, but I think it's funny. I'm not sure if that's the right word, but as we've aged, how our approach to all of this is shifting and evolving. I think we went through a kick your butt phase, right? Like the harder, the better. Maybe we weren't conscious of the miles or the elevation. And I think Jack still likes to do that to us. I'm going to make everybody cringe and maybe need counseling. Should I say Devil's Path one more time? It's
Right.
everybody. But I think age has mellowed us and maybe I think it's made me a better hiker and a better misfit. I'm less of an a-hole than I was of get up and go. But I think age has been one factor.
You have evolved in that. You have evolved in that. You've learned that rather than to complain, maybe I'll just start on my own and go out and let these guys catch up.
Because they always catch me at this point. Yeah. In fact, I've learned if I don't, I need to not complain. I need to get out in front. I need to pray you don't pass me, right? You know.
I think as we
and of course,
age,
injuries.
I'm sorry.
I just was going to throw out the injuries. Go ahead, Chris.
I was going to say, as far as the trips have changed and how we've changed, is that I think that we talked about shaving weight and getting lighter packs, and I think that we started that for endurance purposes. And as we age, I think that those lighter packs are more meant because as we get older, we need lighter packs. And I've noticed a shift. We've talked about the chairs, and noticing that we've changed to incorporate cabins in some of our trips, so that we go out and we go to the cabin and pack in steaks or however we get it into the cabin, whether we drive it in and walk it in that way. And so it's there waiting for us the next day. But we're evolving into the camping aspect of backpacking. And I think as we get older, that camping aspect is we want it to be more comfortable. We want the camping aspect of it. So we're giving way, and having that lighter weight is adding to the fact that we can make camping more comfortable and add chairs and things like that. So that I think that's where we're evolving to. So as
I
we
think
get
it's
older,
worth noting that at times you volunteer to play the role of chef, and it's a darn good thing. We all benefit from it. And hey, it's fun being in a cabin, cooking a steak on a Franklin stove and figuring some of that stuff out. It's just, but Chris, you're right. I think adding, these are pretty rustic cabins. There's no electricity. It's might have a potbelly stove or fireplace or something. We're still using all our gear. We just don't need the tent, and maybe we get a little heat that night if it's necessary. But they are a ton of fun, and I see us doing more of that.
Agreed.
I agree. Yeah.
Oh, and it allows us to do more cold weather hiking too. We've got these winter trips that we're doing now, and the cabins really are a benefit.
So I don't know if this is something that you guys think about, but Mark and I always end up walking for miles on the trail, and it seems to me that we all go through ups and downs off the trail. Like I can't tell you the number of times I've been walking with Mark and business is good, it's great, business is bad, business is terrible, life, whatever comes at us. And not only do the woods heal, I think friendships help in that. And it's nice to have people to listen to. So what's your thoughts on how we help each other when we kind of bring that real life into the woods?
Yeah, I'll just say, I just think it gives everyone just an outlet to, if nothing else, just vent. And maybe it doesn't get resolved, but at least it just helps to share it with someone else, besides your of course your spouse or your close family. The saying of what happens on the trail stays on the trail, and what's said on the trail stays on the trail.
Not that anything happens.
I think it's not that anything ever happens. It never does.
It's not like Vegas or anything like that.
No, but where else can you hike up a difficult trail and talk tax code with a master's in tax like Muddiman? Like you just can't get that anywhere else, right?
Right. There's nothing like
it.
Or we get chemical process engineering discussions while we're in the woods about melting plastic or something, Now Jack brings that, right? Always a benefit.
Because you need to know that
I
stuff.
do need to know that stuff. But I don't know if there's maybe a lot to talk about, but that's probably the thing I appreciate the most is the stuff. Sure, you could talk to your spouse about it, or you can maybe talk to somebody else, but it's a great outlet for us all to be heard, and it's one I really appreciate.
To add to
It's the kind of place, also the place where you can have conversations as a CEO or a leader, and then a minute later you're 13 years old talking about butts. And
yeah. I was going to invite Seymour, but he was busy.
My note I added that just I do a lot of things with guys. I fish, and there's no one time that you have, like, men don't talk to each other generally. They don't talk about their lives to each other, and it's the one time that actually happens. And if we have a conversation or something going on, that you can have that discussion, and for whatever reason it doesn't, we open up, and I don't know why that is. I can't explain it, but we take advantage of it, and I appreciate that. I appreciate all you guys for that.
We all smell the same. We all think we're on the verge of throwing up, probably, Chris, but there's more to that. I think you're right. Your thought about where you had that moment, I think you have that same kind of moment where it's okay, just talk about stuff too,
Yeah.
And that's a good thing.
Yeah. Just getting back to one thing you said before, Chris, I think some of how we've evolved as a group over time is maybe in the earlier hikes. It was kind of like every man for himself, to a point. And I think we've all kind of realized we just need to stay closer together and look out for each other as we're going on some of these trips. Because there is some, hard sections that you just want to make sure your buddy's doing okay. And I think we're all aware of that more so now than before.
In the early years, one of us often got lost for miles at a time. So I think you're right. It's more natural to do that. But in the beginning, we were like running a race, and whoever finished first. But I think that's been a nice thing, especially as the slowest member of the Misfits. It's certainly something I get. Really simple question, but why do we backpack? Why do you backpack?
Well, I do it for exercise.
Okay.
To do something other than cycling. That's the first reason.
Yeah.
And then the second reason is what we were all just talking about with the camaraderie. You can talk about stuff that you're not going to talk to somebody else about, or your mind is just relaxed and stuff comes up that you wouldn't think of when you're doing all your other day-to-day chores.
So, Jack, this would be where my role would be to say that your notes said you said to get away from your wife, Laura. That's what I'm supposed to say at this point, but I won't do that. Okay, I won't do that at all. That would be rough to listen to.
What are friends for?
Now you can watch the podcast.
Exactly. Now she's just going to love it. Be like,
yeah,
great. How about you guys? Why do you backpack?
Everything Jack said, and a simple thing is it heightens my senses, the smell, the taste of things, the sight. It's not always good smells, but there's a lot of good smells. And we have to filter our own water. We need the necessities start. You become aware of necessities again. Everything's at our fingertips, and it's good to kind of ground yourself and what good lives we have, and comfortable lives, but we wouldn't realize that as much if we weren't doing this. I don't believe.
Excellent.
Yeah, I tack on to what Jack had said, and personally, I just like something where I also have a feeling of motion, whether it's biking or hiking. I just like that feeling of moving, and especially in the woods, it's just so peaceful. And as Ray just said, there's a lot of different smells, and your senses are just working hard to take it all in.
Chris, you want to go next? You want me to go?
I'll go. I just like to be outside. You talking about smells. One of the first things I do on every trail is the first pine tree that I come across is I swipe the pine needles off of the pine tree, and I rub my hands together. And probably the first 30 minutes of the walk, all I do is just stick my hands up to my face and smell my hands and take that in. And it's just the way I start a trip. But being outside for 3 days just really clears your brain. I think obviously the camaraderie and the fellowship is part of it, but I think it's primal to get outside and be outside and to be out and survive without, the comforts of home. I just love that aspect of backpacking.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, my whole life, I spent my early years outside. I wanted to work outside. I wanted to be a park ranger. I wanted to, my early years were like that. And now I spent my whole life at a desk, which is so absurd if you think about that. But in the beginning, when we started to do it again, it was about getting back in shape. It was about getting out in the woods, because that's how I view myself, as being out in the woods. But now it's really kind of funny. It's changed for me. I'm going to do it until I can't. And that's why I do it. Like, I'm now determined to do it and overcome, and whatever's hard. I'm just not going to, I forget where we were, Jack and Mark, but we met someone on his last hike. I think it was North Carolina, the Balds, I think.
No,
Mount Rogers.
Mount Rogers.
Yeah. Mount Rogers, yep.
And to honor the man, he was someone who was in a retirement home. I think he snuck out, and he was going to be on his last hike. And he was walking around and backpacking and, pretty old, and at least Jack's age, I think, somewhere around, sorry, I can't help myself. But, he was pretty beat up, bloody. And he came up to us and said, have you seen my daughter? We're like, no. What does she look like? He goes, no, I'm walking away from her, So I hope someday that my kids are looking for me in the woods, all jokes aside,
Mm-hmm.
And they know that's where they'll probably find me. So kind of jumped around. Guys, have anything you want to cover? Coming closer to the wrap here, I do want to talk a little bit about the future, like where we want to take this thing. Maybe goals we have. I was thinking how proud I was when we did some charitable stuff as a group. We all have tremendous abundance, and we're very generous. And I admire the things we've done there. But is there anything else you guys want to touch on other than our future and where you think we're headed?
You had one question you didn't get to where we kind of jumped around a little bit, and you said talk about the camaraderie and the friendship aspect of this. And one of the things that I wrote down was that we've all become closer friends because of this group, but it kind of, for me, the name Misfits rings through because under normal circumstances and outside of this group, I don't know that we would be friends or even that close of a group of guys, to be honest with you. I knew Mark and Chris. I would have never met Jack, and I probably never met Ray. And without the hiking, I think that, Chris and Mark and I would probably be more acquaintances or business clients or something along that line. And I'm just appreciative of the fact that we were able to create this group or become part of the group and make our friendships greater. So I just wanted to get that in.
The shared experiences. Anyone either want to give them a hard time or agree with them?
I think it's true. Yeah.
No, I'll agree with. Yeah, good points.
Yeah.
Good points, Chris.
I know that when I joined later in the adventure, it was you guys were well established, and I had a feeling of I'm not sure, how where I'm going to fit in, how I'm going to fit in. I didn't put a lot of thought into it because I just do things because I want to.
Right.
But I couldn't help but think, these guys have a very established group, and it takes a lot to get 4 people together on a trip, let alone 5 vehicles and whatnot. So as time went by, I felt more and more comfortable in the group, and I found, I think, a place, and I think I found the reason why I was invited in the first place. I fit in somewhere. I'm not always sure where, but I feel part of it.
So this is a risk, but I have to. So what do we, Ray? What do you guys think makes up a misfit? Why was Ray a fit?
Same personality traits of being able to laugh at just stupid shit, and
He's 12
and just joke around and not take it too seriously, but also contribute to the cause.
And and be willing to work through the pain. How many people do you guys know that you say, yeah, we walked 55 miles? Not me. I'd never do that. That's crazy. You have weight on your back. Is it flat? I mean, so there's a certain mentality I think you have to have. You have to want to do that, right?
Yes.
And
Yes, sir.
then you've got to be able to deal with how it feels to do it. And Ray, I knew that was going to be the easy part for you. I did not know you were going to be so good around a fire. That's an added perk. We all talk about that. Your Christmas bonus is coming. Don't you worry.
We get little surprises every now and then. I don't remember which trip it was, but there was thoughts about hunters out in the woods. And when we all got together for the trip, Whitty showed up with 5 orange buffs so we could all have some orange on us as we were walking through the woods. That was great. And I still have that thing. I use it all the time.
I still don't know why you wore it on your ankle, Jack, but that's a different story.
Yeah.
Yeah. A buff is something around your neck or around your head, and so you don't get shot.
Yeah.
Although we don't see a lot of wildlife if you think about it.
Yeah.
No.
We scare them away with noise and smell,
Just
probably, I would imagine, for real.
The only wildlife we see is
the other thing I
rain.
would say,
True. Yeah.
I was just going to add that for the whoever might listen to this, just think that it's never too late to try. I was fairly old when I started this, never having done it before, and it's not as hard as you think, and you just got to set your mind to it and just do it. And whether it's hiking or something else, don't wait. Get out there and just try it right now and get outside.
And by the way, there are very few things you can do that can burn 400 to 600 calories an hour all day long. It ain't bad for you on many fronts,
Yep.
That is for sure. So somebody bring us home. Where are we headed next? What's our future?
Here's what I wrote down. I would love to do these trips 4 times per year. And I know that gets into issues with family and how much time do we really have, but that's a goal. I'd love to do 4, once a quarter would be a nice trip. Then I'd also like to do a 2-week stretch on the AT. I think that would really be a challenge. 1 week was a fair amount of work, but 2 weeks I think would be just something totally different.
Probably get to a different mental and physical place.
Yes.
You also add a challenge of maybe needing to cache supplies or ship them.
It would take a food drop. Yeah, for sure, a food drop.
But that's the fun. That's part of the fun, though. I enjoy that mental exercise of trying to figure it all out.
I could plan that. And
then just going out and doing it.
There you go. Our logistics supply chain manager will be all over that. That is for sure.
Yeah.
I'd like to do, I don't know whether it's the Continental Divide piece, the section of that, or I'd like to do something more remote than the AT at some point with this.
I actually I would say something that includes orienteering.
Okay.
When you say remote, we getting off trail and doing remote, I'd like to try that.
That sounds really interesting. And I think I just really want to keep being able to do these. That's my goal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's my overall goal to keep. It gives me motivation to make sure my body's right, because I enjoy it so much that I don't want me being lazy to cause me to miss a trip. So in between trips, I'm thinking about that. I think in life that's going to slow down the aging process. That
discipline between trips is smart just in general for us. So I love what you're saying there. So I often just say like last and final, any closing things. And then Mark, I think we have, as a Misfit group, we kind of have we love John Muir, Wilderness Essays. I think you've got something you want to bring us home and read? But last and final, anybody want to close with any thoughts?
Yeah, I don't know about 2 weeks on the AT. I'm more interested in maybe finding.
Jack, you
another
weren't
location.
invited on that trip anyway. No, 2 weeks is a lot. You're right.
But no, like another Sierras trip where we did part of the John Muir Trail, someplace out west. But I talked to a guy. He said there's some great hiking up in Canada, around the Bay of Fundy. So there's just so much out there.
And obviously, I love the West. I hope one of our trips is I host you guys from Teton Valley, and maybe we backpack. This will be a real test, but maybe we backpack in Yellowstone. It's a different animal, right? Wolf,
Yeah,
grizzly,
Grizzlies. Yeah, thanks.
and wolves. You got bear spray. I don't know.
Yeah.
Do you have wolf spray? Because you're going to need that too. But
we use the buddy system. Remember?
I do. Yeah, and the buddy system, Chris.
Can you carry weapons
We'll
in
have to look.
Yellowstone?
We'll have to look into that. I think you can.
Okay.
I mean, the bears and the grizzly carry, so why can't you? Right?
Why not?
No, I'm not sure if you can. You may have to get a permit for that. But anything else?
No, I think the common theme is, as we've been saying all along, is get outside. That's the number one thing we want to do. And this is a good way to, maybe force isn't the right word, but
Ensure.
control ourselves into getting outside.
Which is why I always just prefer the old get out,
Yeah.
Get out.
Get out.
Mark, bring us home with
Yeah. So this was something I don't know if you can see this book. This is a John Muir book. To say that he was a prolific writer is an understatement. As you know, he was in the high Sierras for many years, just surveying and writing and discovering. And in one of his letters, it's actually to his sister. I was just reading this one day, and one of his most famous lines just happens to be in this letter, so I figured I would just close with that. I won't read the whole letter, just a paragraph that's of interest. It says, "The Scotch are slow, but someday I will have the results of my mountain studies in a form in which you all will be able to read and judge of them. In the meantime, I write occasionally for the Overland Monthly, but neither these magazines nor my first book will form any finished part of the scientific contribution that I hope to make. The mountains are calling, and I must go. And I will work on while I can, studying incessantly." And then he goes on to close with the last paragraph. So that's, I think, probably a phrase most people have seen. The mountains are calling, and I must go. And that's, I think, what we kind of live by as a group.
I think that's terrific. If it's not on our shirt, it will be, right? If it's not on there, it will be.
Yes.
Well, Misfits, I love you to pieces. And this is pretty terrific. Oh, look at that. So there's the Misfit hiker. So, and we got something on the back.
See?
The mountains are calling, and I must go. Mark, you were a little too low. We could, see more than the shirt, but it's all good.
That was intentional.
I know. So we had fun. We laughed. We cried. It was serious. I do love me some Misfits, and I look forward to our next trip. But thanks for honoring me and, kind of taking this seriously, but being yourselves. I think people like real, and I think we made good radio. Thanks for being on.